Welcome back, Year 5. Today we'll be reading Chapter 9 of Fantastic Mr. Fox. Today we're going to be stepping a little bit away from vocabulary so that we can go back to focusing on comprehension questions. Last week we focused on the in the text style comprehension questions, the write there questions and the think and search questions. Today our learning intention is to respond to author and me questions using information from the text and my own background knowledge. Well, in order for us to do this successfully, the first thing we need to do is look closely at what an author and me question is. So like I said, last week we focused on the in the book questions, the write there questions and the think and search questions, which you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. Today, we're moving over to the right-hand side of the screen where you find the in my head questions. Specifically, we're focusing on author and you or author and me questions. Tomorrow we'll work on my own questions. Under author and you, it says, the answer is not in the story. So when you get one of these questions, no matter how much you flip through the book, you're never going to find a sentence or a paragraph or a page that tells you the answer. What you need to do is think about what you already know from your own background knowledge and what the author tells you in the text and how those two things fit together. So although the author doesn't give you a direct answer to the question, they give you information that will help you answer the question. Let's look at an example of one of these types of questions so that you know what I mean. So the sample question. Which of the farmers, that's Bogus, Boonce, and Bean, is the nastiest? Well, think about it. Has Roald Dahl at any point in the book said that one particular farmer is the nastiest out of the three? No. This kind of question actually requires you to have your own opinion. In order to have an opinion, you're going to have to combine what the author has told you about the three farmers with what you already know from your own experiences. That's what makes this an author and me question. The author gives you little tidbits, and then you combine that with your background knowledge to come up with your idea. So your answer might be different from my answer, and it might be different from someone else's answer. So let's take a moment now to look at two possible answers to this question of which of the farmers is the nastiest. So here are two sample answers. The first is from Maurice in blue, and the second is from Corinna in purple. Let's start with Maurice's answer. He said, I think Farmer Bean is the nastiest because he picks things out of his ears and flicks them around. I think that is a terrible habit to have, and I find it absolutely disgusting. So Maurice has answered this author and me question by using information from the text and combining it with his own thinking. The information he got from the text was that Bean picks things out of his ears. The author told us that in one of the chapters. But then he combined that with his own thinking. He knows from his own background knowledge, his own experience, that picking things out of your ears, especially in front of people, is a nasty habit. So he put that together and used that as his reason for why he thinks Bean is the nastiest farmer. What about Corinna? She said, I think Boonce is the nastiest of them all. His diet is absolutely disgusting. To mush goose liver into a paste and then stuff them into donuts should be a sin. With eating habits like that, he must be the grossest. So, as we can see right away, Corinna's answer is different from Maurice. She picked a different farmer. But she still answered the question really well. And that's because she took information from the text and combined it with her own opinion, her own thinking. The information she took from the text was the things that Boonce eats. It told us early on in chapter 1 that he eats goose liver mushed up and he stuffs them into donuts. She then said that she thinks that's disgusting, and for that reason she thinks he's the nastiest farmer. So although her answer is different from Maurice, it's still an excellent answer. So with all of that said, keep these things in mind. When you're answering an author and me question, you should use information from the text. Then you're going to combine that information with your own thoughts or opinions. And finally, just remember there's not always a right answer. Sometimes it's okay to have a different answer. You just have to be able to justify it like Maurice and Corinna did. So now let's move on to our reading of the next chapter. Afterwards, I'll show you your independent work, which is to answer 3 author and me questions. Chapter 9. Mr. Fox has a plan. For 3 days and 3 nights this waiting game went on. How long can a fox go without food or water? Bogus asked on the 3rd day. Not much longer now, Bean told him. He'll make a run for it soon. He'll have to. Bean was right. Down in the tunnel, the foxes were slowly but surely starving to death. If only we could have just a tiny sip of water, said one of the small foxes. Oh, Dad, can't you do something? Couldn't we make a dash for it, Dad? We'd have a little bit of a chance, wouldn't we? No chance at all, snapped Mrs. Fox. I refuse to let you go up there and face those guns. I'd sooner you stay down here and die in peace. Mr. Fox had not spoken for a long time. He had been sitting quite still, his eyes closed, not even hearing what the others were saying. Mrs. Fox knew that he was trying desperately to think of a way out. And now, as she looked at him, she saw him stir himself and get slowly to his feet. He looked back at his wife. There was a little spark of excitement dancing in his eyes. What is it, darling? Said Mrs. Fox quickly. I've just had a bit of an idea, Mr. Fox said carefully. What? They cried. Oh, Dad, what is it? Come on, said Mrs. Fox. Tell us quickly. Well, said Mr. Fox. Then he stopped and sighed and sadly shook his head. He sat down again. It's no good, he said. It won't work after all. Why not, Dad? Because it means more digging, and we aren't any of us strong enough for that after 3 days and nights without food. Yes, we are, Dad, cried the small foxes, jumping up and running to their father. We can do it. You see if we can't. So can you. Mr. Fox looked at the 4 small foxes and he smiled. What fine children I have, he thought. They are starving to death, and they haven't had a drink for 3 days. But they are still undefeated. I must not let them down. I suppose we could give it a try, he said. Let's go, Dad. Tell us what you want us to do. Slowly, Mrs. Fox got to her feet. She was suffering more than any of them from the lack of food and water. She was very weak. I am so sorry, she said, but I don't think I'm going to be much help. You stay right where you are, my darling, said Mr. Fox. We can handle this by ourselves. So that brings us to the end of Chapter 9, Mr. Fox Has a Plan. In the comment section below, go ahead and write a prediction of what you think Mr. Fox might be thinking. What might he want them to do? But now, let's move on to our independent work. For your independent work, you have 3 questions to answer. The instructions say, answer each question in full sentences using evidence from the text and your own background knowledge. So remember what I said before, for an author and me question, you have to take some information from the text, and then you have to show what you were thinking about that information. If you need to, go back and look at Maurice and Corinna's answers as a little bit of a guide in what you need to write. Question 1 asks, is it right for Mr. Fox to take chickens, ducks, and geese from the farms? It's okay if you guys come up with different answers. It's kind of an opinion question, but even though it's an opinion question, you have to support it with some information from the text. So if you say yes, it's right for him to do it, you have to show some information from the text that justifies him taking the chickens, ducks, and geese. If you say no, it's not right for him to do it, you also have to give evidence from the text. And of course, since it's an author and me question, you have to support it with some of your own thinking, your own background knowledge. Question 2 says, do you think Mr. Fox is a good father? Explain. Again, that's asking you for your opinion, but you still have to use some evidence from the text. So there must be something he did in the story that will either make you think yes, he's a good father, or no, he's not. So make sure you show that evidence. And finally, question 3, are the farmers villains or bad guys for protecting their farms? Again, it's an opinion question. Some of you might say yes, they're definitely bad guys. Others might say no, they're not. But you have to use evidence from the text to support your answer. So if you say yes, you need to show why they're such bad guys. If you say no, you have to show why they're not bad guys. And you also need to justify it with your own opinion, your own thinking on the matter. To answer each of these questions, I would expect you to write about 2 to 3 sentences for each one. Don't forget to write the question above your answer, please. And then when you're done, take a picture and send it to me. That's all for today, Year 5. Stay safe and I'll see you soon.